It's time for the podcast, which is all about the world of marketing on television through TV shopping networks and infomercials. Are we on the air? I'm your host, Sean Wilsey, and for over 29 years, I've hosted shows on cable shopping networks generating hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. And now I want to be your guide into this world, explaining how it works, why it works, what doesn't work, and introduce you to the people who are making it the success that it is today. And on today's show, we're actually going to be going back in time again. We did this on an earlier show all about the radio soap opera and how that was created, or a number of them were created by Procter & Gamble in an effort to sell soaps. And come the late 1940s, early 1950s, television became the dominant medium, or slowly started to make inroads into that way. Radio shows continued through the mid-1950s, but television really did start to become the thing. Now, I have some news that is going to be of a big shock to a lot of people. Oh, by the way, before I do that, end of this show, the last segment, I have a very esoteric segment that will probably get me a Peabody Award. So I just want to put it out there for Peabody consideration to be the third segment of this show. It's the kind of thing you might want to save and maybe play around the Thanksgiving dinner table, or if you're listening to this after Thanksgiving, for Hanukkah, for Christmas. Share it with the family when the whole family's gathered around. It's going to be very, very esoteric and highbrow, and it's almost collegiate level. But we'll get to that coming up in a little bit. Anyway, the breaking news that I have. Because in order to understand the world of direct marketing, TV shopping, infomercials, we have to understand the history of television. And you have to understand how advertising has worked over the years. Here's the breaking news I have. The head of NBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, the heads of every cable network with commercials, the general managers of every local television station in this country, none of them give a damn if you're watching their television shows. They only care that you see the commercials. That's it. Everything in between the commercial blocks is fill. That's all it is. It is a means of keeping you there so you will watch the commercials, because it's those advertisements that pay the bills, that pay the salaries, that make the companies a profit, which make the shareholders happy. It's democracy at its best. It is the free market, is what I guess I should say it is. It's how this country works. Money makes the world go round. But it's true, though. If you are a studio executive and you have a hit show, boy, you're excited. We got a big rating with that show last night. You don't care about what was in that show. All you care is that that rating equaled the number of people that watched your commercials. That's what it comes down to. And that is why I think it's almost a little, I don't want to say disingenuous necessarily, but for people to say, oh, I don't watch TV shopping. Oh, I don't watch infomercials. If you're watching commercials on television, you're being sold a product, and it is affecting the decision you make in the stores. And it was really in the 1950s when that power really started to be recognized and then harnessed, and not necessarily in good ways, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But to understand how advertising became so powerful on television, you have to understand how ratings work. And I want to go through something. Again, remember a rating. Because you hear these numbers, right? Such and such a show got a 12 rating last night. Rating is the percentage of the entire population of TV-equipped households that were watching that show. Don't confuse it with share. Share is the number of people that had their TV on at that moment that were watching that show. Rating's the number that everyone cares about. Let's do a quick little history lesson here. We're going to go back in 10-year increments, starting with the last decade, so we can safely go back in 10-year increments. The top-rated show of the 2018 to 2019 season was Sunday Night Football. It got a 10.9 rating. That's the highest rating regular for a series. So that means of all the TV-equipped households, and remember, that's a number that is changing, and not necessarily in a good way, that 10.9% of the population, that's as high a rating as achieved. Now, that's not counting one-time events like Oscars, and even those ratings are down and things like that. So that is what scored the top TV show of the year. Go back 10 years, 2008. Top-rated show got a 15.1. It was American Idol. 10 years before that, 1998, top show, ER, 17.8 rating. See the trend? 1993, I'm going to go back 5 years. 60 Minutes, top-rated show, 21.9 rating. So already just going back 25 years, the top-rated show had double the rating. Go back to 1988, Cosby Show, 25.6. 1978, Laverne and Shirley, 30.5. 1958, Gunsmoke, 43.1 rating. Nothing gets a 43.1 rating on television anymore. Nothing. But it was back in that time when the advertiser started to realize the power of a good commercial and the power of advertising. And in particular, TV shows like the top-rated show. Let's go back to 1952. Top-rated show was I Love Lucy. No surprise probably to most people that would be the top-rated show. Its rating, listen to this, was 67.3. 2/3 of all the TV-equipped households were watching that show at that moment. Remember, there was no record and watch later in any of these eras. Well, into the 90s, I guess there was, in the 80s. But this was, you watched a show when it ran, and 67% of the population was watching I Love Lucy. Back then, TV shows had one sponsor. So if you sponsored a show, you had one chance to get the audience's attention. And it's not like today where you had 6 minutes of advertising every half hour. In daytime, I think it's 8 minutes now. It might be 10 minutes actually now on daytime television. 10 minutes of every half hour. You had 2 minutes. Shows ran much longer. You were the one advertiser. You had 2 minutes to get people's attention. I'm going to play for you, boy, you could never do this today, a Philip Morris commercial from the I Love Lucy show. So again, this is their attempt to get the viewer's attention to buy their cigarette on television. Can you imagine this? Hasn't flown since 1971. First thing you'll hear is very dated. Philip Morris had a slogan, Call for Philip Morris, and they had a young guy dressed as a what did you even call them? Bellhop that you would have at hotels. And if someone got a phone call at the hotel, this person would walk through the lobby saying, call for John Smith. And they just would call it out till someone raised their hand. Hey, I'm John Smith. And you got a phone call over here at the desk. So that's the first thing that you'll hear is their little catchphrase. And then you'll hear Ricky and Lucy.
Call for Philip Morris. Oh, thank you, dear.
Ricky handed her a cigarette.
Hey, the last one. You better get another pack.
Okay.
Now, Lucy gets up, goes to some artwork on the wall, takes the artwork off, and behind the artwork is a wall safe. There's a lot of dead air in these early commercials.
Thank you.
She takes out a carton.
You probably think that we're making a big fuss over a cigarette. Well, sure. You don't really have to keep this wonderful new king-size Philip Morris cigarette in a safe. It's just our way of telling you that they are kind of precious. The finest king-size cigarette in America today. Smooth, mild, and mellow, and easy on your throat. How about you trying them yourself? Just call for Philip Morris, king-size or regular. Buy them by the carton. You're gonna love them, and we're gonna love you. Hey, what was that for?
You said it so beautifully.
Good night, everybody.
See you next week.
Lucille Ball and P. Arnaz will be
So
back
again,
next week
that would
at
have,
the same time.
Closed out their show. It really was a very good commercial. You had star power to begin with. A lot of commercials in the 1950s were just the announcer really talking over some action on screen. And it wasn't that different than taking a radio commercial and just putting pictures to it. So you had star power. This gets into the tie-in with the power of celebrities. When you have the two celebrities that are the star of the number one TV show on television with a 67 rating or whatever it was, that's big. The adjectives that he used. They talked about how smooth it was. And you, again, heard in Ricky Ricardo's voice, even with his Cuban accent, you heard the connotation changed, and you heard him deliver. Man, made me want, I haven't had a cigarette in 20 years, made me want to have one. He did such a good job with that. But you had a minute, because they would have had another minute break mid-show, and then that minute there right before they ran the credits, to get the viewer's attention. Here's another example.
How about a good night cigarette, Ricky?
Thank you, Lucy.
A good night cigarette. How about a good night cigarette? It's so dated. But back then, nobody thought twice about it. Yeah, a good night cigarette. It's what you do. A good night cigarette. All right.
Nothing but the best, huh?
Natch, nothing but Philip Morris.
Nothing like going to bed with smoker's breath, right? Oh, that good night kiss after your good night cigarette. I love these old commercials.
Sure tastes good. And you know something, Lucy? When you find a good friend, well, you kind of like to pass it along to your friends.
That means you. Have you tried a Philip Morris lately?
You'll love them. They're so smooth and mild, and they taste so good.
And most important, there's no cigarette hangover when you smoke Philip Morris.
That's right. That's what we say. You'll be glad tomorrow.
You smoked Philip Morris today.
Good night.
So will your doctor. I'm not making light of that. I shouldn't have said that. But it is so dated. But again, it was an effective commercial. You had Lucy looking at the camera after Ricky said, you want to share with your friend, and that's when she looked at the camera and said, and that means you. So she was making that connection with the viewer. Hey, I'm Lucy's friend. They think of me that much. It really, that was 45 seconds. Again, it was a little tag right before they ran the credits. So that was effective. I mean, I hate to give a cigarette company credit, but that was effective. And in 1952, 1953, I think were the dates on those, advertisers were still getting their feet wet. But slowly as advertisers started realizing the power of this new medium, the commercials, by the way, in the 1950s are not that great. I can't tell you how many hours I spent trying to find really interesting examples of commercials from the 50s, and there aren't that many, simply because it was a radio announcer doing a radio commercial, basically, and then the video would just kind of match whatever he was talking about. So if you want to look for some on your own, search Coke. Coke had a bunch like that. It's just they're not that interesting to listen to and to comment on. But anyway, fast forwarding to the latter part of the 50s now, advertisers started to realize, because again, you had one show, one advertiser. I Love Lucy, it was Philip Morris. But especially in the 1950s now, when the primetime quiz shows started to become so very, very popular, that's when the grip on the show by the advertiser started to become so powerful. In the late 1950s, and of course I closed my book up so now I can't find my reference material. Here it is. So I Love Lucy top show, and then all of a sudden, October 55 through April 1956, I Love Lucy fell to number 2, 46 rating, so it had dropped. The top show that season was a show called The $64,000 Question with a 47.5 rating. This was the dawn of the big money quiz shows. If you remember the movie Robert Redford did called Quiz Show in the mid-1990s, it was all about this quiz show 21 and how it was rigged. They never really got into the why was it rigged. Well, it was rigged to create drama. Why? To create ratings. Why? Because that's what the advertiser wanted.
Good evening. I'm Jack Barry. Tonight, Hank Bloomgarden, who has so far won $116,000, will play a fourth tie game against Harold Craig at $2,000 a point. Much could be won or lost in just a matter of moments. To learn the outcome, let's meet our first two players. As Geritol, the high-potency tonic that helps you feel stronger fast, presents 21.
Back for the third week, Mr. Harold Craig. And returning with $116,000, Mr. Hank Bloomgarden.
And that's where the contestants walked out from behind Jack Barry, the host of 21, co-creator, co-producer of 21. You feel the drama in that. big timpani drum roll. The set was, as you saw, if you saw the movie, they did a nice job duplicating what the actual set was all dark, very ominous. You had the light on Jack Barry, close up as he introduced the show. And it was all designed around drama. Drama to create ratings, ratings to make Geritol happy. Why was Geritol not happy at first? Well, because the first show was a train wreck. This is supposed to be a competition among very educated people with a lot of drama. It didn't work out that way.
Blink. I'm sorry, Tishan. I'm sorry you don't score, and that puts you right back to 0. What are we going to do with these two fellas? It's supposed to be a news show. It's turning out to be the greatest comedy show on the air.
That was just a small clip from the first episode. It's only kind of translating what just happened. So you're supposed to have this competition between two very smart gentlemen. And first one gets 21 points, wins the game, and thousands of dollars. By the way, that Hank Bloomgarden, just to put it into perspective, that they were introducing, they said he had won $116,000. In today's money, that's $1,132,382. So that was unprecedented that someone would win $100,000 on television. That was getting the ratings. That was keeping this going. But the way the game was formatted, it didn't work. And so the first episode took place. You had these supposedly learned gentlemen answering these questions, or attempting to, and unable to. So it was failure, because they lost their points. They'd get some points, they'd lose them. So the people at Geritol who were sponsoring this, and they're paying very good money to sponsor this show. How do they make their money back? By people buying Geritol, were not pleased. After that first show, they told Jack Barry and Dan Enright, the co-producers of this, they said, that is not going to happen again. If you want us to sponsor this show, you are not going to do that. And so they realized that the only way they were going to make this format work was to rig it. Now, there had already been rumblings at $64,000 Question, which was making Revlon so much money because they were the sponsor of that show. They could not keep products in the store. Imagine that's your problem. I'm Revlon, and I'm selling a lipstick during the $64,000 Question. Now, this is not the day of instant gratification. You didn't just get in your car and immediately go to the store then and buy it. You had to go to the store the next day. There was such demand. The host, Hal March, had to get on TV and say, folks, Revlon apologizes. We know there's a shortage of this lipstick. Just be patient. They're working on making more. Revlon was loving this. Geritol wanted this. And so they said, listen, you got to fix this program, so that's not going to happen again. And so that is why the show became rigged. And they would feed contestants the answers. They would tell the contestants, pat your brow. They turned the air conditioning off in the isolation booth, so it would get very hot, so they'd perspire, so they looked like they were under a lot of stress. And that is what created the drama. It was more a drama show than a quiz show, let's be honest here, that made Geritol happy because they started selling product. And their commercials were about as basic as you could get. It's Jack Barry looking at the camera, talking about Geritol.
Oh, questions. I guess I've asked thousands of questions at one time or another here on television. I'm not used to it yet, but there is one simple question that I think almost everybody asks everybody else. I think you know the question. What's the weather going to be like? Well, from the reports that we have had from all around the country, and especially right here in New York, it's been hot and cold and unseasonable, and it looks like we're really in for a tough, rough winter. And I think you know what that means, too. It means plenty of sickness. So will you remember, if you feel tired and run down, and especially after a cold, flu, sore throat, or virus, you may suffer from iron deficiency anemia. That's a very fancy term for what we call tired blood.
I'm going to stop there because this is something that got Geritol into a lot of trouble down the road. And in fact, this is really one of the best examples yet of how if you're going to sell a product and you're going to be making some medical claims, you better have some really good documentation to cover your ass about these medical claims. Tired blood became almost like a joke down the road because iron deficiency anemia could be a real thing, but calling it tired blood, it was good marketing. It was great marketing. Oh my gosh, I might have tired blood. Great marketing. It's a phrase that would stick in people's heads. And if you're a product, you want a phrase that sticks in people's heads, and tired blood was a good one. So from a marketing standpoint, it's great. From a legal standpoint,
Tired blood. You check with your doctor, and to feel stronger fast, take Geritol. In just 24 hours, Geritol iron is in your bloodstream, carrying strength and energy to every part of your body.
Yeah, prove that,
Just 2
please.
tablespoons of liquid Geritol, or 2 of the Geritol tablets, contain twice the iron in a pound of calf's liver. So remember, if tired blood is your problem, especially in this rough weather after those colds or flu or sore throat of the virus, take either the good-tasting liquid Geritol or the handy Geritol tablets and take it every day. Believe me, you'll feel stronger fast within 7 days, or you get your money back.
Now back to the Crooked Quiz Show. A few things hit me on that. First off, my grandfather used to take Geritol because the liquid, in particular, came in a bottle. One of the reasons you felt so good after taking it is Geritol was 12% alcohol. So, of course you're going to feel good. But if you remember, speaking of I Love Lucy, as we did earlier, the old Vitamita Vegemin thing, that was kind of a goof on Geritol because of the alcohol content in it. And so, yeah, of course I'm going to feel better. I'm getting a nice buzz going on here. Good tasting, I've tried it. Yeah, that's a stretch. What's the other line he used? Oh, feel better fast. That was Geritol's other big catchphrase. That they just ingrained in your head, because Geritol did a lot of advertising on television back then. Not just 21, but a lot of TV shows. And so they got their catchphrases out there. Tired blood, feel better fast. It worked brilliantly for the company. Now, eventually, and again, this is where if you've got a product you want to sell and you're going to make medical claims, you better be there to cover your ass with it. They did get into big trouble. Not Lysol. Listerine got into similar trouble in the 1970s, making claims about how they were claiming it would cure the common cold. In fact, as part of their decree with the FDA, they had to, in subsequent commercials for a few years, say, well, we will not cure the common cold, we're blah, 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 blah. That's another show, and we are going to devote one to that. But, again, the power of the advertiser back then. Well, the quiz show scandals hit. It's revealed that all these shows are crooked. Dotto, 21, $64,000 question, $64,000 challenge, The Big Surprise, long list of shows that were rigged under pressure from the advertisers. That's the only reason this happened. And rules were put in place that pretty much prevented this from happening. You didn't have big money given away on a quiz show again for about 15, 20 years. And the advertisers really lost their power. Yes, you would still have maybe one advertiser for most shows, but many shows now had a second or a third advertiser on it. So it prevented one advertiser from taking control of a television show. Now, next time, and I still have my Peabody Award-winning piece to come, we're going to talk about the 1960s, because in the 1960s, commercials changed, and we're going to call that episode You Can't Do That on Television, because the ad agencies, rather than just having an announcer talk over some very boring video, got very clever and were doing things you could never get away with today on television. But before we get to that, this is an example of a 1950s ad, and it's an example of how some things don't change in advertising. We're going to go back to the 1950s. I'm going to play you a commercial that ran on television. We'll talk about it. Then we're going to play a 2019 version of a commercial for a similar product. And look at how similar they are. The lesson here is, well, sometimes you just have to walk a fine line. I'm not even going to announce what this product is. I'll just play it. I think it'll speak for itself, so to speak.
Thank you, Bud. Here's the new Laxative Advance for fast relief of temporary irregularity. It's new Seratan Plus in capsule form. And here's the big news about Seratan Plus. In a recent study, 94% of the people who tried Seratan Plus reported beneficial results with this new Laxative Advance. Seratan Plus works so much more effectively, yet is so kind to your system. So the next time you suffer from temporary irregularity, take Seratan Plus as directed. This new Laxative Advance must give you fast overnight relief Plus, more gentle, dependable relief from temporary irregularity or your money back.
Be sure to ask for Saratan Plus.
Last voice there was Bud Collier, the host. That ran actually during the TV show, the game show To Tell the Truth, which is back on the air again and has been for like 5-6 years now. A laxative commercial. An issue, a problem that everybody has from time to time, but it's one of those things you just don't discuss, especially in the 1950s. Remember, in the 1950s, if you were advertising a bra, for instance, you couldn't literally show the woman wearing the bra. Hard liquor, you could not advertise at all on television in the 1950s. Here's a product you could advertise, but you really had to dance around what you're taking it for. Did you hear the words that he used? You know, he didn't say what it's for, but yet he said what it's for, which to me, by the way, is very clever writing. I've always said the best comics are the ones that don't actually say the dirty thing, but imply it and dance around it, because it takes a lot more creativity to do that. And it's the same thing in advertising. When you have a product like this that is talking about an issue, I'll say it, you can't poop. And so you have to dance around it. Now you would think, okay, a lot has changed. Can we say, I can't poop, what do I do? Well, here's a recent example.
Mr. Senna's into nature.
Professor Cott's into science.
But together we work. Like our Senecot laxatives.
To relieve occasional constipation, Senecot's made from the Senna plant.
Refined by science to be reliable.
Perfect match! Just like us. Senecot.
The only thing that has changed is they use the word constipation. That is the only thing that has changed. You're looking at over 50 years of advertising and evolving, and one word was added to the script: constipation. That's it. So that's why I say there's still, even in this day and age, I don't even know if it's necessarily a prudishness. It's just an avoidance of really discussing what it's for. We've come a long way with a lot of commercials, a lot of products. A lot has changed, but there's still a lot that hasn't changed, and there's still a long ways to go. Feel free to share that last clip there with your friends over Thanksgiving dinner, your family, because I think there's a conversation to be had, and I can just imagine families around the country enjoying that conversation. That can't poop, take Senecot. I could write that commercial. Really easy. I can't poop, take Senecot. Oh, I'm having way too much fun. Anyway, Twitter, Facebook. My name, Shawn Wilsey, is where you can find me. ShawnWilsie. I'm happy to carry on this conversation on Facebook and Twitter anytime you would like. And on Instagram, at SWilsie, SWilsie. I don't know if this show is going to go on my resume or not. This may be one we forget ever aired, ever happened. I love that segment. The show is called Are We On the Air? And I do appreciate you downloading and tuning in. Love your reviews, 5-star in particular. Ratings are always welcome, so thank you for taking the time to listen to this show. Oh, unforgettable. This has been a King Bobby production.
Yes, I know, Travis. That's why we give such bargains.